We just finished today's Beyond the Gates. Let's jump into it. A much quieter day in Fairmont Crest for most of our friends, but there was a little plot movement when it comes to Andre. So let's jump into it. Caroline is at the office, straightening up Bill's desk, and Hayley comes in with a fruit basket as a thank you for, saving Bill's life. And it's like this tiny little fruit basket. And according to Dani, was it Dani, that the grapes look a few days old. Caroline's like, oh, I'll put it next to this basket. And obviously it's the basket that we know Naomi gave her from her and Chelsea yesterday. So Hayley's like, I know that better not be from Dani. And so Caroline explains it's from Chelsea and Naomi. And they, Caroline asks how Bill is doing, and Hayley goes into her sad sack act, and Hayley brings up that, she's wondering if Bill might leave her to go back to Dani, and Caroline tries to assuage her fears and all that stuff. And she's like, here, take him this fruit basket. Caroline was like, I don't want... She's like, it's a heart-healthy snack you can give him. Caroline was like, I got this incredible basket of spa gifts and a gift certificate. I do not need your unripened bananas. And then, Hayley's like, oh, yeah, you're so right. And she hugs her, and she's like, you're my very best friend. And Hayley's look, so when the camera is on Hayley looks like, oh yeah, I played her, I got over on her. I couldn't quite read Caroline if she wasn't falling for Hayley's BS or if it was like a sigh of relief that Hayley still considers her best friend. What did you guys think? Because I had a hard time reading it, so I wasn't quite sure how that was being played. Yesterday, we left off the episode with Andre going into Bill's room, so we got that confrontation today where Bill's like, are you lost? And he tells Andre that he's insecure because, Dani was there at the hospital with him. And Andre was getting a lot of quips in about Bill's age and health condition, and one of them was, your old ass got rushed to the hospital, and your heart is one misbeat away from failure. That was a delicious line. Your heart is one misbeat away from failure. Whoever wrote that line, whether it was Michelle Tracy, the breakdown writer, or the script writer, bravo, because that line just jumped out to me. I thought it was so smart and so clever, and we love when our characters get smart and clever dialogue. So kudos. And as this conversation or confrontation is happening with Bill and Andre, we, the viewers, can hear Bill's heart rate accelerating. And eventually Ashley comes in because it's setting off the alarm at the nurse's station, and Andre ultimately leaves. But Bill does get in a quip about Dani not being able to forget about him. And Andre's like, yeah, because you treated her like dirt. So glad, again, we love conflict. Glad that there was no easy resolution to this, that we're allowing Andre to have heat for Bill to not be a changed man just because he went into cardiac arrest and has a softer stance towards Andre. We want them to butt heads. We want them to be adversaries. So kudos, good job. We love it. Over at the casino, not much was happening. Randy was updating Joey on Heather's whereabouts. She's here, there, and everywhere. But she was at the country club, and Joey pretty much knew that. I was like, Randy loves to pretend. They like to. There's word on the street that Randy's smarter than everybody, and it's like, dude, Joey already knew where Heather was. Joey already knew that Heather was at the country club because he knew that she was playing tennis, or she was scheduled to play tennis with Vanessa. Now, okay, so what? She's staying at the Bowman Hotel. That's where everybody stays. No big surprise. It would have been a bigger shock had she just bought a house in the Fairmont Crest. But then they start talking about Vanessa and, keeping her, safe and all the things. And Joey tells Randy how, Heather wants to merge their two businesses. And, I think he told that to Randy. And because Vanessa already knows that, right? He said it to one of them. I don't know. Anyway, but Joey does bring up the Impaler. Randy assumes that Heather still is associated with the Impaler, like works for him, but is not the Impaler. So Joey's like, just keep an eye on her. So Joey, you'll never know where she is if you're depending on Randy. Over at the country club, Vanessa and Dani are still talking about the whole Andre and Bill of it all. Heather comes over. She wants to swap. She wants to postpone the tennis match with Vanessa because she saw that there's a hot stone massage available. Vanessa's like, yeah, the pass I gave you is good for a month. We can play tennis anytime. Go have your massage. They talk to Heather about the Bill situation, Dani Bill situation. Heather doesn't really have a whole lot more to add except that she admires Dani, blah, 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 blah. More anvils, I believe, dropping that Heather is the person from Andre's past. Although there was something that was a bit confusing a little later on to, I think, try to throw us off the track. But Vanessa, when Heather leaves to go get her massage, Vanessa says that she likes Heather. So there you go. Over at the House of Horrors, also known as the Richardson Smith or Smith Richardson house, Samantha and Tyrell have gone for coffee at the Coffee Gymboree place at the mall. They're hoping that Samantha getting Tyrell out of the house will help. Martin has this fixation on that lion, I guess, which is the Banneker mascot. Like, he holds it the entire episode. It was like, dude, calm down. But Smitty wants to go upstairs and have the sex, but because, the gays can never get it on, Kat interrupts. Now, I like Kat more than I like Smitty and Martin, so I'll allow it. I will allow the interruption because whenever we get some Kat, whenever Kat comes on the scene, it's a good time. So she busts in. Where's my nephew? She's all ready to pull Tyrell out of his depression. They tell her about the kids going to get coffee. Kat's like, oh, that was a good idea. But she brought him a video game, which was a very nice and thoughtful thing to do because she's the fun aunt. And I think it was Martin. I start to blank out. Who's like, oh, a video game so he can stay stuck up in his room. So, of course, Kat feels like, oh, I didn't think about that. So, of course, Kat is diminished and feels bad because, all she did was go and buy her nephew who loves video games a video game to try to help bring him out of his funk. But, of course, Martin couldn't just accept the gesture. He had to find fault with it. But he wants to tell you that he holds the record as the best big brother in the world. Bullshit. Anyway, Smitty finds out that this new true crime podcast in DC wants him on to talk about his articles for about the Impaler. Kat thinks it's a great idea. Of course, Kat is familiar with this podcast. For a moment there, I thought it was Kat. I thought it was Kat's podcast, and I thought that was going to be the twist. Shonda comes over, the campaign manager, with polling information for this imaginary election that Martin's going through. And, they're still ahead, but they can't take anything for granted. They tell Shonda about the true crime podcast. Kat is enthusiastic about it. Shonda's like, I forbid it. And then they're like, well, you forbid what? And she's like, well, I highly recommend against it. You don't know who these people are. What if you get there and they start asking questions about Martin and derails the campaign? And they were like, he's very media savvy. He is a journalist and he has been through a campaign with Martin before. So she's like, okay, well, I just don't think it's a good idea. Later, Martin and Smitty are alone at the apartment, and Martin says to Smitty, if you want to do it, do it. I will support you. You have been supportive of my career. I'm going to be supportive of your career. So if it's something you want to do, go ahead and do it. Again, I feel like this is another way that the writers have heard what viewers have been talking about in terms of Martin being very controlling, about being selfish, about making decisions about his career and Smitty's career unilaterally. And today was a fix for that, where Martin acknowledged that it's Smitty's career. He trusts Smitty to make the right decision, to make the decision that's right for him, and that it's time for Martin to support Smitty's career. So I appreciated that. I still don't like Martin, but at least they're starting to acknowledge some of the things that audiences are responding to, viewers are responding to with the characters. That, listen, if you wanted to keep Martin that way, that's fine, where he's controlling, where he's selfish about his career and, diminishes Smitty's career like we saw last year. Like, that would be absolutely fine with me. You just have to acknowledge it. You can't, you can't just keep playing that he's like this really good guy, this really selfless guy, this all-around great guy, when he's doing stuff like that. So I think this is their way of acknowledging that they want to move Martin away from that being that type of person, because they don't want to write, because they know it's contradictory, right? So good on them. We'll see how long it lasts. Ashley and Grayson were in the episode. Vanessa goes over to see Joey. She talks about, Bill and Dani in a toxic relationship, but she doesn't realize she's in a toxic relationship. She says that Joey is nothing like Bill. His morality is much better than Bill's. I cannot wait for Vanessa to be humiliated. I need her to be. Now, it's going to be hard because Joey, obviously isn't going to prison, but I need her to be humiliated when she finds out that Joey arranged for Doug's death. He is the person who called for Doug's death, and it happened, because she just looks like a fool on a daily basis. His morale, he's has better morality than Bill? Was she drunk again? Did Heather get you? Because, girl. Anyway, she talks about how Heather was with her and Dani at the country club. Joey warns against introducing Heather to her friends. He's like, you can't really trust her. Vanessa, of course, doesn't listen to him because, her gut. And so this is I hope it all blows up in her face. I want it all to blow up in her face. We get a scene of Dani thinking about her memories with Andre that includes their courtship, their impromptu marriage in Las Vegas, and then her memories of Bill, Chelsea's kidnapping. They were sitting on the staircase, but they were a little too dressed up for the kidnapping. So I thought that was the kidnapping, but what else? Why else would they have been at the Dupree mansion on the staircase other than Chelsea's kidnapping? You tell me. Anyway, she goes through the memories of the golf club against Bill's stuff on Bill's desk, giving him the key, the platinum gold key that she had made. That was the original key to the building that she bought him. She should have got half that law firm in the settlement. So we had that. So, Dani, look, girl, I know you're torn, and just be alone, because neither one of them are any good. Ashley lectures Andre on his way to get on the elevator about antagonizing Bill, because he's in, the hospital and his heart condition, all that stuff. Dani goes to see Bill afterwards, and she wants to know what he said to Andre. And she's like, you better not have told him about what happened between us on the elevator. Now, they were having this conversation with his hospital room door completely open, and I was thinking that Hayley was going to overhear the conversation. Now, Hayley very well might have overheard the conversation outside the room, and we just didn't see it. They just didn't cut to her. But she comes in with the basket all bubbly and perky and walks right past Dani and kisses Bill. That's when Dani, has snark about the fruit basket and says she'll text Hayley, the vendor that they use. No need to thank her. So Hayley said she's not leaving. She, was shouting at Ashley, and she's like, I'm not leaving my husband's side, because that was the advice that Caroline gave her. She was like, if you want Bill to, think you love him, maybe don't leave his side at the hospital. Andre goes to Uptown. Grayson is bartending. He's ordering, double drinks, and he's getting texts from his stalker. The stalker is pretending to be at Uptown, and Andre's just all paranoid. Later, we see Kat and Shonda at the country club, and they're talking about being on the same page for Martin's campaign, because, Kat is like, obviously I want him to win. And Shonda's like, well, we need to be on the same page. I feel like they were like, oh, the audience doesn't want to see, the Duprees being hard on Kat. So let's bring in Shonda. we can sneak in some snark from Martin that nobody will catch. I caught it. So, but in the background, while we're watching Shonda and Kat, we see Heather lurking around the country club as if she's looking for someone or trying not to be seen, not quite sure. Bill is in that hospital room eating that fruit, because one thing Timon is going to do when he's in a scene with food is make the choice as an actor that character is going to eat, because Bill is an eater. So, stop it. So, good stuff. Hayley, says that maybe she and Andre have a good reason to be worried. When she's talking to Bill, she says, maybe, Andre and I have a good reason to be worried about you and Dani. Another anvil. I think, the secret might be coming out sooner than expected. My expectation is November, but, we're in mid-August now, so it could happen. It could happen in the fall. Dani calls Andre, wants to check in on him. He says he's on his way home. She's at the hospital. He's at Uptown. He says he's on his way home. She's at the hospital. She says she's on her way home. I thought Andre was going to hear, because there was an announcement in the background while she was on the phone with him. So I thought he was going to hear that and get upset. We didn't see that actually happen, but they exchange I love yous. And then through the window of Uptown, we know that the stalker is there, watching Andre. So when we saw Heather lurking around the country club, I assumed that they were. I was kind of like, oh, one or two things are happening. One, Heather isn't the stalker. Heather isn't the woman from Andre's past, because they're establishing her at the country club. Or they're trying to trick us into thinking that she's not the stalker because they're establishing at the country club. But you know how people in soaps move. They can get from place to place rather quickly. So maybe by the time we got back to Andre at Uptown, Heather... Because remember, we're not sure if Uptown is actually in Barrington County, where Fairmont Crest is, or if Uptown is in D.C. We know the hospital's in D.C. We know Orphe Jeans is in D.C. We know the clinic is in D.C. Uptown, I don't think, has been established where exactly it is. Although, I think it might be in D.C. because of the mugging thing and the homeless guy. Like, the geography... Again, I've lived there, but the geography on the show confuses me. Anyway, tomorrow we know that we're going to get more movement with the Andre and his stalker, or, the person from his past. So we know that I think that's probably tomorrow's cliffhanger. If there's a reveal at the end of the episode, I think that's going to be it. It wasn't a bad episode by any means. It was just not as forward moving as the previous episodes this week have been. Not as much focus on the Kill Bill aspect of figuring out, Hayley's secret. There was obviously movement towards Andre and the person from his past. I keep calling him a stalker. I don't know if really stalker is the correct term. But, and just some, more just reminding the audience of the conflict between Dani and Bill as far as their secret is concerned. I don't know why Dani keeps taking advice from Vanessa. Like, it is just insane to me. Katie, I know you're busy. Bring Pamela's ass back to Fairmont Crest post haste. But yeah, it was a good episode. Liked it. Just not as exciting as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But every day can't be rip-roaring exciting. I think today was really to remind viewers who are a little bit more casual about viewing and don't necessarily tune in every day what some of the major plot points were, because there was repetitive dialogue about Heather and not trusting Heather with Joey and Vanessa. There was, all the Hayley, Bill, Dani, Andre stuff. Ashley had to remind the audience that she once wanted Andre all for herself, but now she just wants him to be as happy as she is with Grayson. So, again, not a bad episode, just not like super exciting. I do wonder that they're bringing in the true crime podcast thing. I do wonder if that is going to if that's going to play actually into story in the near future, or if we're moving towards Kat actually starting her true crime podcast. We'll see how it goes. I'll see you later.